This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
So in today's society, what does it mean to be masculine? Guys, welcome to the Bird Brain Podcast, where the goal is to rise above it all, stay elevated, create that infinity, and up your you. I'm your host, Isaiah, and for some people out there, it was just Father's Day, or it is Father's Day, and wishing all the dads out there very happy Father's Day. A day of recognition, appreciation, love, value, care in the ways that you need, not what society tells you you deserve. And it was crazy because I was thinking about this. Masculinity in itself is truly a very interesting construct, as a man, as a male in society. What I see, what I experience, what I practice, all exist in very different ways, I think. And, masculinity for myself, what does it mean? What does it mean? It's funny because when I really think about it, I draw a blank. And I think it's cool to some capacity just because it's just being, for me, it's just being myself, right? And I think the irony that does come with, masculinity for me is that my environment, my upbringing was predominantly women, right? Predominantly women. And the irony is that these women were in very male-dominated fields, and they were like at the head, having siblings that were in martial arts that were my senseis, right? I trained under them. I was taught under them, and they are, the first females to reach either black belt, and that be a whole experience, right? Because in a very male-dominated field, as a woman, you are going to be challenged, right? And then, having, women that are in very male-dominated fields like law enforcement and being kind of at the forefront of that, right? Being the one that people go to, being the person that people rely on, but still being a woman nonetheless, so means you're going to get challenged. And I think for myself, as a man, as a man of color, there can be a lot of stereotypes and projections, right, to be a certain way or be perceived a certain way. And I think for myself, one of the things I've been told is like, I'm a very nurturing person by nature, very nurturing person. And I think what comes with being nurturing is also being able to protect, being able to defend, being able to also hold space though, right? And that's the thing about masculinity in terms of the mercurial kind of position of what it means, what it does mean, and what it represents, and how I represent it. And I think I was thinking about this because, when it came to Mother's Day, we were talking about Mother's Day and mental health, right? How mothers typically have the role of, their identity is more rooted in who they are taking care of, not just who they are as a person. I can't tell you how many clients, I would ask them, moms, what do you like to do for fun? Like, what do you enjoy? And then they would just list off all their kids' activities. Or you listen to them and they're like, oh yeah, I got to go run errands for my kid. I got to go to the school thing. Everything is about my children. I have friends like that too. And then sometimes you will listen to a conversation from a guy who may be a father, and he talks about all his hobbies, right? I go do this with my buddies, or I have this going on at work. Boom, boom, boom. And a lot of times his identity is rooted in his activities or his accolades. Okay. And it is interesting when you really put your ear to the ground and you just listen to what people talk about that's important to them. What feels like this is who I am, and what feels like this is what I have to show up for. This is my identity. And I think, for fathers, before you become a father, you're still a man first. And before you get the label of man, you're a human. And when you're a human, you have needs, right? And I think, the universal need for anyone, regardless of gender, is to feel like they matter. And how you perceive how you matter is varying. However, sometimes our fundamental need is there. We just don't know how to communicate or articulate it, or even ask for it, because we ourselves are not sure. Okay. If there hasn't been room to ask for things or communicate certain things in a safe way, everything gets distorted. And there's this book by Bell Hooks that I just finished reading called The Will to Change. And it's about masculinity. And I think it was so brilliant to read it from a woman's perspective in society, and being around men, and also having, siblings, a partner, like being around men and experiencing men in today's society and what that's like. And as I was reading it, I was thinking about my mom, thinking about my sisters, thinking about my aunts. I was thinking about my friends, all the women in my life. And then when I was also thinking about myself, like how do I perpetuate certain things? How do I benefit from certain things? Like, what does that all look like? And who am I as an individual? And when it comes to Father's Day, I see it's so weird. I feel okay. So here's a weird example. I was looking for a birthday card recently, and it was for my buddy. I was looking for a birthday card for my boy, and there was this very small section for birthday cards, and right above that section there was Father's Day cards. Very limited space. And then in the birthday cards is, you usually see from, sister to brother, from mother to son, I don't know if I saw a father to son. I don't even know if I saw a brother to brother. I don't even know if I saw a friend to friend, right? And I think I might have saw it. Because I've gotten cards in the past where it was like, hey, to my brother. But it was not this thing where it was clear that, hey, brother, you're my brother, I'm your brother, and we love and care about each other. It was just kind of like this thing, a formality. The cards felt more like a formality than actual space to communicate and to convey appreciation and care and all that nurturing. And what I've realized just through my own experiences with my male friends is that it's a need. However, it's not a safety or comfort. And a lot of times guys just don't know how to do it. I think I talked about this before, but there is this statistic that says that men typically don't have close male friendships later in life. The statistic is very sobering, right? Because, men are told, you provide, right? You build a family, you get the good job, and your only friends now are your wife and your children. That's it. Um, and that's the societal standard, which is why, like, the idea of, like, oh, yeah, now that I have a girlfriend, you should just understand. And, our friendship doesn't really matter in no uncertain terms, right? Our friendship is not a priority now that I have this relationship. This, whatever this was, gets downgraded or dismissed or disregarded altogether or eliminated. And the expectations that, that's just how the world works. And it's a real interesting conversation and dynamic to exist in, especially if one other party. And, guys have talked about this, right? Where they're like, oh, my boy, we're tight and then got a girlfriend and now we don't talk. And the conversation kind of happens. It doesn't really, it's kind of like it happens in secret almost, right? People don't really talk about it. Or the ability to have that discussion and find some common ground may not be there just because, again, value systems. One of the things I think I've understood is how and what people value will determine how they function. And you cannot change that. You cannot change the things that people value. And when you learn that, it takes the edge off. Like, yeah, you might still be disappointed and certain things may sting, but overall you just recognize, oh, okay, this person doesn't value the same things that I do. So we move differently. And, that's information. But, this thing of men not having friendships later in life is interesting. What I found is that, the when the buffers are no longer there, the buddies aren't either, right? A lot of times friendships for men are sustained through hobbies and activities, not necessarily through intimacy and connection, right? Which is why, when you get older, physically you can't participate in as many things. So yeah, it's not going to be too many activities, which means that the utility for the connection is gone. Now we actually just have to, take care of each other. And a lot of people don't know how to do that, right?
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouthwatering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
It's cool because there are these two. I'll go when I go running at the park. There are two elderly gentlemen I see, and they walk every morning together. And I'm like, oh, if they're friends, that's dope. I think that's cool. It's necessary, right? Because a walk is a walk. There's no competition there. There's connection. Okay, we're both staying healthy. We're both whatever the hell we're discussing. Sometimes guys talk about the weather in sports, and never about, hey, how's the weather in your life? What's the weather like in your heart space? Because to do that is intimacy, right? It's uncomfortable. It's vulnerability. Yeah, I think it's just very interesting, that information and that statistic and what I've seen and what I've noticed. Okay. And there's a lot of reasons I could get into in terms of why that happens. But, on the surface level, yeah, men later in life don't typically have friends. And I recognize they need it. There's a need for it. there's a desire for it, but there's not necessarily the verbiage behind it developed to actually speak and say, damn, I need some friends. I need my bros. I need connection. And it doesn't necessarily have to be us doing anything. It's just as long as we're connected, that matters, right? And I was thinking about, like, what does it mean to be a fatherly figure? What does that mean? And how does it feel? What does it embody? And it's funny because that's kind of an identity that I've received from people in my life. They're like, yeah, you're very like fatherly. You're very nurturing. You're very much like a father figure to me, or like a mentor. And it's just ironic because, I didn't have that. I didn't have that. However, I've learned in interesting ways, I guess, to be that for other people without necessarily knowing, without that being my intention. And, with my siblings, the same energy, right? Protector, nurturer, but also the kind of person that people know that they could come to me with emotional space, and, they need a safe space to be cared for, and that's still there. And again, I was thinking about this because, and going back to the card thing, I think it was so interesting to stand there and look at the card section and how limited it was, because I was like, do guys give each other cards? Is that a thing? Do we do that for one another? Is that a practice? Does it feel appropriate? Sometimes no, because there's a fear of intimacy, right? To read certain things that someone feels and cares for you in a certain way. Sometimes that could be very uncomfortable for people, especially men. Especially men. So what does it mean, right? And I wonder if sometimes men want more of that. Actually, I know they do. I know they do. And I was looking at there's a bakery that I received emails from, and it was like, oh, Father's Day, father's favorite flavor, whiskey. I was like, interesting. Okay. Alcohol, right, is the thing. There's just all these things I've kind of noticed around the father experience. And sometimes I wonder if it's something that's kind of forced or if it's the true desire. And everybody has a different experience, right? Because everybody's human. However, the universal law for what it means to be, again, masculine or fatherly, how does that work and what does it look like? There are sometimes, I've talked to people and they're like, yeah, I have a great dad. I was like, oh, cool. What does that mean? He's like, well, always put food on the table. It's like, came to my sports events. And then you find out more that, hey, my dad probably wasn't really around as much, or like I didn't really seek them out for emotional needs. But they were there otherwise. And then you look at the dead, then you look at what their function was and how what environment they were in, and how it just continues, right? And I say all of this as a ways to just recognize more and more that, fathers are also trying to figure it out. Some are making a little bit more effort to figure it out. But one thing I do understand is that, even having clients who are dads, there's a need to be cared for. There's a need to feel like you matter. The reason why is because before you're a father, you're still a human. And before you're a man, you're still a human, right? So the masculinity thing, I think sometimes overshadows the meaning behind just being a human first and needing connectivity and needing care and needing safety, right? We all want to feel safe, and safe is not necessarily a danger thing. Safe is just like, I want to make sure I can be okay in this space and I can show up as who I am without there being a shame body attached to it, or guilt or embarrassment or blackmail, right? Blackmailing me for my feelings, okay, because I express something important that's sensitive and that's delicate. You know, I heard some guys, they like receiving flowers. I think that's so dope. Like, I think that's so cool. You know, I myself, I'm a plant dad, right? So I have a few plants, and for a time, you know, one of my plants was sick, not doing well. I think partially it was because of me, but also the weather kept changing. But I was I noticed baby girl was not doing well, and because she wasn't doing well, I was very upset, right? And you know, I did everything in my power to restore her, you know, to take care of her. And I did it, right? It's funny, my friends, I really appreciate that my friends were, they didn't make fun of me. There was no joking about it. It was just like, oh, damn, dude, that sucks, you know, because they knew that this was important to me, right? And I just love that so much when I think about it. It's like, you know, to be a man in a lot of ways just simply means that, hey, I'm existent. And for me personally, as Isaiah, it's like, yeah, I'm existent. And, you know, it's the warrior in a garden aspect for me too, where it's like my ability to protect others and protect myself is very much there, right? Skill set, physique, even intellect, I think. And I think because I care so much, that adds more to my ability to protect, to be cognizant, because I'm not just protecting people physically on a day-to-day basis. I also get to protect their emotional well-being. I get to protect their heart space. I get to protect their minds. I get to protect their confidence. I get to protect their self-esteem, right? There are so many ways you can protect another person. You know, so many ways you can protect another person. I think sometimes when we think of masculinity, it just kind of comes down to, you know, getting into fights, you know, roughhousing and sticking your chest out, you know. However, if you really think about it, there's so much more. You know, what does it mean to create safety for others? What does it mean to be a safe person for others? That means you hold your fellow man accountable for a lot of shit that he does or says. That's safety. And sometimes guys don't do that. You know, it's like the whole boys will be boys kind of dynamic. You know, the boys will be boys dynamic does not work. You know, have a calm conversation, but also be willing to say, hey, I'm not okay. That's masculine. And it's not easy, right? One hand washes the other. And I think sometimes what I hear is this discourse between men and women of like, well, I can't express myself with you because you're going to throw it back in my face, etc. And what does it look like to create a safe space amongst men, to be a safe person for your brethren, right? You know, like I said, some of my guy friends are like, yeah, you're like mentor, father figure for me. And I take that to heart. And I take it seriously. But also what I recognize is too is like, I also value the importance of being on a receptive end of friendship too, right? I value the importance of being a community of support, which means that it doesn't just go one way, right? Expressing that need. Like, yeah, you know, I got your back. However, I'm going to need you to have mine too. Okay? This isn't one-sided, right? Because that's where the appreciation and the value and the recognition comes in. Because people could tell you all day what they like about what you give to them, right? Like, oh, you give such good advice. Or, you know, whenever I need you, you're there. All those things. But it's like, how am I supporting you in return? And I think that's important. And if you are a dad out there, I want you to ask yourself, what do I need more of? What have I been fearful of asking for? Do I feel safe in life? And take safety off of just the ability to protect yourself. Do you feel safe in your skin? Do you feel safe, right? Do you feel safe in community to express yourself? What does safety mean? Okay. And how do you think you express safety for other people? And you could ask, right? Hey, do you feel safe with me? You know, outside of your wife and your children. Ask your buddies, hey, do you feel safe with me? And see how they respond. Or how can I develop more safety for you? Okay. And some people may not know how to answer that, honestly. But vulnerability does create connection, right? Intimacy does create connection. And a lot of times there is a lacking of intimacy. Intimacy is not just sexual, right? It's closeness, it's connection. Okay. Dads need love too. And I think it's important for dads out there to recognize that and embrace that. Okay. And realize you're not only as good as what you can provide. Just like with mothers, you're not only as good as what you or who you are willing to take care of and how much you're willing to sacrifice your emotional self to take care of the collective. You're more than that. And with dads, it's like you're more than that. There are some single dads out there, who are doing both jobs. And truthfully, it's like, what are both jobs? What does it mean to just have balance within you, right? Again, the masculinity and the femininity, there are these stark differences, I think, in society. But, and I recognize the stereotypical ones. And then as it starts to become a little bit more, intricate and everything, that's where it kind of loses me sometimes, right? The divine feminine, the divine masculine, all that stuff. I'm just like, I'm going to just show up and give a damn to the best of my ability and learn what I need to along the way to make me a more functional human, okay? And, create safety for others, but also myself. I think that just matters, and it's brilliant. There's so much I could talk about on this, but The Will to Change, I think, was an amazing book. If you don't know it, if you do know it, you know what I'm talking about. But if you don't know it, I would suggest checking it out. If you're a guy, especially, but also if you're a woman, The Will to Change. It's about masculinity, love, and just understanding, right? Just understanding. And I think these days there's a lot more information that we're exposed to. However, there's a lot more desire to hold on intensely to what we already know, because the fear of letting go of that means I lose my identity, and that's not true. Actually, you learn more about who you are when you embrace more, or at least kind of question more, be curious, right? So with that being said, I hope you guys have an amazing week. I want you to just challenge and ask yourself, what does it mean to be a father? What does it mean to have a father? What does it mean to be masculine? What does it mean to be feminine? What does it mean to be nurturing? What does it mean to be safe? Ask yourself those questions, right? Ask the people in your life those questions, okay? And then you go from there. But take care of yourselves, all right? Take care of each other. Take flight.